Bonjour Rémi,
Bonjour, comment ça va?
ça va très bien et vous, c'est Zénabou.
Ça va, Zénabou, contente de vous entendre.
Oh oui, ça fait très longtemps.
Depuis notre rencontre à Nairobi.
C'est ça, c'est ça. Du coup, on va faire quelques petits tests. On
Ok,
va faire quelques petits tests pour voir juste si tout va bien en matière de vidéo, la caméra, enfin, en fait, le micro et tout.
d'accord.
Ok, donc,
Je partage mon écran?
oh, pas encore. En
Ok,
fait, le temps qu'on vous présente et tout, on a une petite présentation genre de fond. Comme ça, je pense qu'on
Mhm,
va le temps de vous présenter aux participants quand ils seront là. Et là,
d'accord.
on va vous laisser faire la présentation. Vous pourrez
Ok.
partager votre écran.
Alors, je vais juste prendre mon stylo, j'arrive.
Pas de souci. On a des participants qui ont commencé à venir. Hello, hi Amy.
Hello!
Oui, salut Amy, comment tu vas?
Je vais bien et toi, Olivia?
Ça va? Tu sais que j'avais complètement oublié que tu étais bilingue.
Non, mais je suis bilingue avec un énorme accent, donc j'espère que ça ira.
Non, mais c'est très bien, c'est très bien. C'est très bien du tout. Vraiment, c'est bien. Merci. Merci de prendre le temps pour ce matin.
Avec plaisir.
Oui, c'est bien. On a déjà, hier, on avait combien déjà? Oui, une soixantaine de personnes. Mais en général,
Super!
il y a plus de gens qui rejoignent à la dernière minute, quoi.
À la dernière minute.
Oui.
Ok.
Bon, merci
Alors,
beaucoup. Merci.
ce sont les membres d'Impact Santé, c'est ça?
Donc, il y a des membres de CS4Me, qui est le réseau PALU, Civil Society
Oui.
Malaria Elimination, mais on
Mhm.
envoie aussi au programme paludisme, bref, à tous les partenaires qu'on a dans notre base. Mais en général,
D'accord,
les organisations de la société civile et on a aussi les programmes PALU.
d'accord.
Et les CCM aussi, les CCM du Fonds mondial qui nous.
Ah oui, 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 bien sûr, ouais. Très bien.
Ok, super. Donc, à tout à l'heure. Alors, on va commencer tout à
À
l'heure
tout à l'heure.
en général, on va laisser 5 minutes pour que les gens se connectent.
Bien
Donc,
sûr.
voilà. Donc, vers 10h05, on va commencer.
OK.
Merci beaucoup, Amy.
Merci.
À tout à l'heure.
Yeah. We are waiting for people to come. We start at 10.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our webinar on long-lasting mosquito nets with our partner, Vestergaard. So thank you. We are very happy to have you all here. If that's okay, we will just allow a few minutes, maybe three or 5 minutes to allow other participants who are joining in to connect. And so we will start exactly at 10:05, so in 5 minutes exactly. So thank you for staying with us. We're going to just wait 2 or 3 minutes because other people are joining us now. And then we will be ready to start in just 3 to 5 minutes. Thank you so much. So good morning. Thank you for everyone joining us. So we will start in just two minutes. So in the meantime, if you want to introduce yourself in the chat box, it would be great if you want to tell us your name, your organization name, and your country, so that our guest speaker can see who is with us today. And then also we have you have the Q&A box. So during the webinar, please feel free to ask all of your questions in the Q&A box that you see on your screen. And then we will be ready to answer all of your questions at the end of the webinar. Okay? So please tell us who you are, your name, your organization's name, and your country, and we're going to start almost now. Please thank you. Okay. So hi Amy, thank you so much for joining us. I hope everyone can hear me well. So my name is Olivia. I'm the Executive Director of Impact Santé Afrique, which is an NGO based in Cameroon and based in Africa. And we are specialized and we focus on malaria, communication and advocacy. And we are also coordinating the first platform of civil society organization for malaria elimination, CS4Me. And you can find all the information on cs4me.org or impactsante.org to learn more about our work. So we are very happy because we have a lot of our members who have joined, and we also have invited partners from the National Malaria Control Program, from the CCM, and also any other actor that is involved in malaria. So we are super excited today because we have our guest. Her name is Amy Françoise Cacas, and Amy is she's bilingual. Actually, she also speaks French. And Amy is work with Defects, which is a private sector company specializing in mosquito nets. So she will tell us all about mosquito nets during this webinar. And also we're going to get to learn what is new in this area and also what is the impact of LLINs in the fight against malaria. So Amy was born in France, but she grew up in West Africa, in Mali. Her passion for international relations and communication and on social development led her to study social science and project management in Paris, where she obtained her bachelor in cultural mediation and communication science. And later on, she was first-class honor during her master's degree in management at the European and international project. So her professional experience started in Africa as a youth and community development project manager. So she worked for various European agencies, and she joined a team of Professor Jefferson from Columbia University. And today she's based in Nairobi. She was based in Nairobi and worked for the Millennium Development Goals Center. And also that experience led her to several projects in public health, in WASH, around gender, around community development, and also around cultural industries and education. So Amy was asked to strengthen Vestergaard's portfolio in East Africa, and she was assigned a position of regional manager for Uganda, Mozambique, Rwanda, Burundi, and a few other French-speaking countries. So Amy can tell us more about herself, and then we will start right away. So thank you everybody for joining us. We are very happy to have you, and we hope we're going to have another great productive time, and we hope that you will be able to engage as Amy presents. You can use the Q&A box to write any questions or any comment that you have, and then at the end of the day we will be ready to answer. So thank you for everyone who's introducing themselves on the chat. So we are happy to have people from Nigeria, from Rwanda, from Cameroon, from other countries. So thank you, everybody. And Tanzania, thank you, Sophie, for joining us as well, from Women for the Global Fund. So yes, we're going to start now. And Amy, please, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Olivia. Good morning, good afternoon to all. First, a very, very big thank you to Impact Santé Afrique, to CS4Me, Zenabou, Olivia, and our teams. Thank you for creating this opportunity and to share with you all. I'm also amazed by the diversity of the participants. Thank you so much all for being here. Thank you. Thank you really for this opportunity. I'm very happy I'll be able to give you a glimpse of what is making mosquito nets our passion and the cornerstone of our contribution to fight malaria. So just a quick, maybe a technical question. I can't see the Q&A box. Oh, yes, okay, I can see it there. Let me share my screen. I guess, Olivia, we can start.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Okay, everyone can see my screen?
Yes, yes, thank you, it's perfect.
Okay, So just a minute, let me just adjust here. Okay. All right. Okay. So today I'll try to tell you everything you should know about mosquito nets. But there is much more to know than what this presentation can hold. And let me just maybe say that the complex fight against malaria is made possible by the knowledge, the expertise of many domains of competence: epidemiologists, entomologists, ecologists, experts of communication, of logistics, engineering, research, etc. So this is just a small part, a very small, tiny part of the fight. So today we are going to talk about mosquito nets as a preventive tool, but a tool that prevents from mosquito. And I think it's maybe good to put the mosquito into perspective and see how dangerous a mosquito is. So you might know that LLIN have been contributing to 68% in the reduction of malaria cases. And for this reason, I think mosquito nets impregnated with insecticide are one of the most powerful vector control tools against malaria. And that's what makes it so interesting. So let's take a look at the mosquito and see maybe, so I can't see, okay, here I am. And see how dangerous a mosquito is. You have here a very sobering chart showing you how dangerous animals are in the world. And as you can see up at the top, the shark, the lion, the elephant, the crocodile are actually angels compared to mosquitoes and us humans. Look at the mosquitoes responsible for killing about 725,000 people per year. And look at us just behind, 500,000 humans kill each other at the rate of 500,000 per year. So I thought it was good to, just remind each other that, yes, the mosquito is very small, but it's actually the deadliest animal in the world. So let's get started and welcome to the world of mosquito nets. So on this slide, some of the topic we will be seeing today, I'll be taking you through. We'll first watch a small video on vector control. What is vector control in the fight of malaria against malaria, and what's the role of LLINs in that fight? And then why not going back in time and taking a dip into the very, very long story of mosquito nets. So we'll see that from nets which were used actually 5 centuries before Jesus Christ up to today, new generation mosquito nets, PBO, LLIN. You will hear a bit about this history. I think that if you get to know the technology behind an LLIN, a modern net actually, you will be convinced that LLINs are not as simple as one can think. Making a net is almost rocket science. And then you might have asked me, why do we treat nets? What is so important behind treating a net? I'll tell you all about bioefficacy and the ability of killing mosquitoes. Later on, we'll talk about insecticide resistance. This is the main challenge of the standard LLIN. This is what causes the net not to actually play their role. So we'll have a look at that. This is a very important topic, and this is insecticide resistance has forced the world to change the way we address mosquitoes. As we get almost to the end of this webinar, I'll tell you about quality. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, quality matters in a mosquito net, and I'll tell you why quality control and substandard products are something you really need to pay attention, and you yourself have a role to play there at country level. By then, I think you'll be knowledgeable enough to approach the main challenge of standard net, and you'll be now, I guess, interested in hearing a bit of tips and good practices and maintenance of the net. What do we do at household level to make sure the net is working as best as possible. So that's about it. I'll end this presentation with a few pictures of some countries in Africa. Just before taking your questions, we will, I think it's important, commend and salute all the health workers and the countries in Africa striving to maintain malaria services, to maintain prevention, to maintain treatment and diagnostic during these terrible times of COVID-19. So I'll just take you through few pictures for you to have a look at how countries are coping with COVID-19 and maintaining their distributions. So let's continue and let's watch this very short movie reminding us all about vector control and very quick history of vector control in the fight against malaria before we get into the core of our topic.
Vectors are insects and other small organisms that transmit infectious diseases by passing them from one animal or person to another. Throughout history, the spread of disease through vectors has resulted in millions and millions of human deaths. Here are some examples. In the Middle Ages, bubonic plague, also known as the Black Death, was mainly spread through fleas carried by infected rats. In 5 years, it's estimated to have killed over 20 million people in Europe alone. Up until the first half of the 20th century, a disease called typhus, transmitted by body lice, killed millions of people around the world, where crowded conditions and poor hygiene was present. Immediately after the Second World War, millions more deaths in Europe from typhus were only just averted by the widespread use of the newly discovered insecticide DDT to kill the lice on millions of refugees, displaced persons and soldiers. One of the most persistent scourges to affect human beings, though, is malaria, transmitted by the mosquito. It's been going on for thousands of years and has killed many millions of people. Malaria can infect anyone. It doesn't matter who you are. For example, it's thought that Alexander the Great, Genghis Khan, founder of the Mongol Empire, and Tutankhamun, the boy king, were some of its more famous victims. Because malaria is transmitted by mosquito vectors, we call it a vector-borne disease. One of the most effective ways of stopping the disease is controlling the vector that transmits it. It's simple, really. No mosquito, no malaria. That's the essence of vector control. There are different ways of using vector control to stop mosquitoes transmitting malaria. Mosquitoes need standing water to breed, so in Europe and the Americas, malaria has largely been driven out by systematically eliminating mosquito breeding sites. Today in Africa, where the biggest problem lies, nearly 700,000 people die from malaria each year, and most of these are children under 5 years old. For them, the best solutions at the moment are to use insecticide-treated bed nets to kill the mosquitoes and stop them from reaching their human targets, as well as spraying the insides of some houses with insecticide. Over the past 10 years, this has resulted in a large fall in the number of malaria cases. Millions of people have benefited. So that's the business we're in, vector control. IVCC, saving lives through vector control.
Okay, so I hope you managed to hear and see the video clearly. Just a small calculation, the most recent calculation tells us that every 2 minutes, a child under 5 years old dies of malaria. So, of course, vector control is paramount here. Let's go to the next slide. Oh, sorry.
Vectors are insects.
These are our culprits. On your left side, you have the Aedes. In the center, you have the mosquito Culex. And on the right, you have here the Anopheles, responsible for transmitting malaria. You have here some of the vector-borne disease transmitted by each respective family of mosquitoes. So the Aedes transmit filariasis, dengue, chikungunya, yellow fever, Rift Valley. The Culex mosquito that you had seen in the middle of the previous slide transmit filariasis also, and some arboviruses like the Rift Valley fever to human. And our mosquito Anopheles transmitting malaria one of the 5 top killers in humanitarian settings. So here, I propose we take a look at the paramount role played by LLIN. This is an important study, it's a major study. Other studies were before and after BAT, but all converging to show that amongst all the interventions, ITN, ACT for treatment, IRS for prevention, LLINs is the biggest contributor and has allowed up to 68% aversion of the malaria cases. So when we talk about vector control, we mainly talk about IRS and ITN or LLIN. I'll explain later, unless I get the question, the difference between ITN and LLIN. So the role of LLINs in the fight against malaria is not to be proven anymore. This is really something that will protect people, half of the time, and more than half of the time when they are sleeping. Today we celebrate the 2nd billion net distributed. So this is really a very large-scale intervention in the fight against malaria. Let's please take a brief look at the very, very long history of mosquito nets. You can see on the left a picture of a very, very ancient vector control tentative. This is the Harris tsetse fly trap. So one of the first tentative of vector control was actually against the tsetse fly. We can laugh, yes, it doesn't really look like a modern mosquito net, but we can also agree that the 4 sides are here, the roof is here. This is somehow, it was a bit unsuccessful. This is from the 30s, but the idea of the cage is already here, and we can give Harris kudos for that. So if the term mosquito net appeared in the 18th century, the usage goes back to 5 centuries before Jesus Christ. And it's actually the discovery of synthetical insecticide DDT during the World War I and the World War II, which you have briefly seen in the short movie we have seen earlier. So the use of DDT mixed with kerosene was sprayed around households, in the areas, and directly on people, on soldiers and on refugees. This is a benchmark in the story of vector control because it has drastically enhanced the impact of vector control efforts. We can also give credit to the researcher Roop. In 1952, he actually designed the very first form of ITN. It was a combination of an attractive bait, a black screen, and an insecticide, actually, again, the DDT, against the tsetse fly. So, we can say that an LLIN is a bit of the same today. The bait is the human sleeping under the net. That's actually the bait, and the textile of the mosquito net contains the insecticide. So here you have a more detailed slide giving you an overview of the evolution of mosquito net use. Let me take the laser pointer. We have 4 big areas of mosquito net use. I won't take you through everything. Let's maybe not the interesting fact that the early use of nets, it was actually to prevent insect bites, but also to prevent people from evil spirits. So they were not yet associated with malaria, but we were getting there. The benchmark of the first era of mosquito use, the World War I, when we started to use chemical, we started to see something there. And I think this is what inspired in the 80s, that is the second very important benchmark of this first period. Researchers started to evaluate the Pyritoid, the insecticide called Pyritoid, which is used up to today up to today, we are using the same insecticide. We have not found another insecticide. It's the only one recommended by WHO because it's not toxic on human. So they started to evaluate how we could impregnate a pyritoid on different fabric, and the target was there, actually mosquito nets. And the results were quite impressive. So this period of the 80s, 90s, this is the second era of mosquito net use, and this is now where we start seeing the widespread use of mosquito net. The 80s and the 90s saw the official entrance of the mosquito net impregnated with pyritoid. It was actually permethrin at the time, as a global policy. The mosquito net became a public health tool, and the focus was on prevention. So what happened at that time, and I'll take you to the next slide to show you that this very first generation of mosquito nets had a very major issue. The nets were bought and the insecticide was bought separately. People had to impregnate their net themselves at home, or the programs were to do that. Let me show you how this was a major constraint. As you can see here, people were to use gloves and mix themselves the solution of insecticide and dip the net every 6 months in that mixture. So of course, at household level, the technique was complicated. You couldn't control the quality. You couldn't control the regularity of the reimpregnation. So it's in the late 90s that a researcher called LLINs highlighted this big issue and maybe opened the reflection and push the innovation of manufacturer to come up with a net that was pre-treated at the factory. So the very first net that came up in the 90s was evaluated by the team of the Professor Cannavale in Ivory Coast. And everyone agreed that the results were great. The net could last 3 years without being manipulated at household level, without being re-impregnated. And this was actually a small revolution and the time to scale up. So back to our slide here. In 2001, we now enter the third era of the mosquito net use. In 2001, WHO officially outlined the advantages of this new type of net, this factory treated net, which was much better than the home treated net. The story continues and continues and continues. Today, we are talking about LLIN. LLIN is the long-lasting insecticidal net, which is different from the ITN, which was the insecticide treated net. This is where the difference is. I mentioned it earlier. And now, as I talk, there is also now a new generation of mosquito nets. So they are called PBO LLIN, and I'll tell you everything about it in a minute, a new generation net. So actually, this picture is not yet complete. And as life evolves, we also need to come up with the innovation and to make sure that our products also evolve. So the making of LLINs, and if I may say, the making of quality LLINs, and as you can see on this picture, a very, very small part of what is necessary to make a good quality LLIN. The 21st century is the century of a very big intensification of LLIN. It's a public health global policy that the targets are being moved to universal coverage. Each sleeping place must be covered by an LLIN. So nowadays the nets are produced on order from the big donors, as you all know, Global Fund, PMI, UNICEF, and manufacturing a quality LLIN require high level capacity. So in these pictures, you're seeing only a fraction of what is needed, because to control the chemical property of your net, you need a lab and you need scientific staff to control and to research and to improve the bioefficacy of the net, you need an insectarium. You need to raise mosquitoes. You need to test your net against mosquitoes. So you also need entomological stuff. And when you look at the physical properties of the net, you need to invest in a textile laboratory with specific testing equipment. I'll give you a few details in a minute. The know-how matters. You need educated and trained technical staff to make a quality LLIN. Let's get into the composition of the insecticide treated net, or the LLIN. So a net is made of two main components. There is the visible component, what you see, the four sides and the roof, made of textile. We have two types of textile. You have a polyethylene and you have polyester. What's the difference? Polyester has a very soft feel when you touch it, very soft and pleasant. And it is known that it's the favorite material for people, for end users. And you have also polyethylene. Polyethylene has this harsher feeling when you touch it. So this is the visible part of your net, but it also contains the invisible part of the net, the insecticide. The textile hold the insecticide. So as I said earlier, the class of insecticide is pyritoid, and we have three types of pyritoid that we use to impregnate the nets: permethrin, deltamethrin, and alpha-cypermethrin. So if the textile is acting as a physical barrier, blocking mosquitoes from entering and biting the person who is sleeping under the net, the insecticide has also a very important role. And it's not only to kill the net in the room. And I'm going to get into this because we sometimes forget why it is so important to have a good insecticide on the net. So here I'll show you again a very small animation, a very small movie, explaining how it all works. How do we actually make sure that the insecticide is inside the fiber of the textile? And here you need to look at two things. You need to look at how a net, the capacity of the net for retention, how can the net keep this insecticide in real usage, in real life, and how this insecticide can regenerate itself without any effort from the end user. How does the insecticide comes back to the surface of the net after washing the net? So let's look at this short animation. Okay, so we have two technologies to impregnate the net. We have the coating technology, and we will also see the binding. So let's start with the coating. This is a piece of net, a netting of polyester yarns. And we are going to zoom into the fiber of this net, this polyester, and see how exactly the insecticide is behaving and is integrated into the textile. So here, this is a fiber of polyester, and you can see that polyester is actually made of multi-filaments. All those white tubes are filament of polyester, and they are put together, they are glued together by a resin. It's like a glue, and this is the glue that contains the insecticide, the pyritoid. So when the mosquito flies around and comes into contact with the net, he actually touches the resin that is coating the filament and dies. So here what we are going to see is what's happening when people wash their nets. So the fiber here is dipped into water and soap. And some of the insecticide is, of course, especially the one near the surface, is lost through washing. Please have a look. Here we go. So the molecules of insecticides are lost and they are washed away. So this is why I'm saying that regeneration is very important, because if you don't champion your technology of making sure that the insecticide that is inside your fiber is going to migrate back to the fiber, to the surface of the fiber after washing, then your net is not going to work. And this is when I said earlier that there is a little bit of rocket science here. This is a lot of research behind that to master this technology. So you can see here what's happening. The technology allows self-regeneration after washing of the insecticide back up to the surface of your fiber, so that when the mosquito will come, the same effect will happen again. The mosquito will be knocked down or will die. So this is the second technology, incorporation technology. So here you have the other type of textile, the polyethylene. And the difference with polyester, here when we zoom and look at the fiber, is actually a monofilament. You can't see these various little filament and tubes looking like tubes that you could see with the polyester. The polyethylene is only one filament. So the insecticide is incorporated in that filament, and the same action happens. You need to champion the way you incorporate your insecticide to the yarn. The mosquito exposed to the insecticide on the surface dies or is knocked down. And when you wash, you lose the insecticide, and you need to have in place a technology that allows self-regeneration after washing. Again, the insecticide has migrated back towards the surface of the yarn, allowing the mosquito to get the toxic effect of the insecticide. Okay, so you see here that knowing exactly how you bind and how you coat your insecticide into your mosquito net has a direct impact on the efficacy and the behavior of the net in real life setting. You need to know that some products have zero insecticide on the surface. When they are new, you remove them from the bag and you can't find insecticide on the net unless you wash it. And this means that the manufacturer was not able to champion this technology. You also have products that have problem with regeneration. You wash the net, and then the net is like an untreated net. There is no more insecticide coming back to the surface of the textile. So these are substandard nets, and they have whether little or no insecticide. And we'll get back on this, because this is not acceptable. Okay, so next slide. We want here to, discuss a little bit more about why is it so important to deploy an effective net with an effective insecticide in the net. We want to ensure that mosquitoes who enter the room, if they manage to enter the room, are killed or are disabled. And because the mosquito net that is treated not only protects the persons who are sleeping under the net, it also protects the people who are around in the room and who might not be sleeping under the net. And it also protects, to a larger scale, the community living in the area of deployment. And that's why mosquito nets are so important in vector control. When you deploy effective treated mosquito nets, you actually reduce the number of mosquitoes that are present in the area. Whether you disable them, you kill them, or they fly away, but you have a lower vector density in the area. And that's why it's so important to treat the mosquito net, to have a treated quality mosquito net. Look at the picture here. I'm sure you have seen before nets where the mosquitoes are dancing on the net, or they are just waiting around for people to get out of the net and bite them. When the net is not impregnated, mosquitoes will just walk on the net and find maybe somewhere where they can enter. Number two, you know that especially, well, children and adults, when they sleep, they might actually touch the net as they are sleeping. They might be in contact with the net. So what the mosquito will do after landing on the roof, because mosquitoes always land on the roof first, the net acts like a chimney. So the mosquitoes are attracted by the top of the net. They step on the net and then they will start walking around the net and find maybe a piece of leg or a piece of head touching the net and bite. So that's why it's so important to have a net that works and that kills mosquitoes. Let's remember here three things that the three modes of actions of pyrethroid. So in general, this pyrethroid provide three modes of action, and it will depend on which pyrethroid you use, delta metrin, alpha cypermetrin or permetrin, and of course the quality of the net. When we'll observe like a more potent effect of one of these three actions. So you have the knockdown effect. It's the KO. The knockdown effect is when the mosquito enters into contact with the net, its nervous system is attacked and paralyzed, and movement or flying are rendered impossible. You have also the lethal effect. This is actually the effect of causing the death of the mosquito. We now know that delta metrin has a more lethal effect, for example, than permetrin. Permetrin is more of a repulsive effect. Permetrin will chase the mosquito away. So knowing all this, I think we need to take a look now at what is happening in terms of progress against malaria. I think you are all familiar with these data. The progress against malaria have stalled since 2015. The incidence rate of malaria declined globally, and between 2010 and 2018, we had the good news of going from 71 cases per 1,000 people at risk to 57 cases. But what we have seen is that from 2014 up to almost today or to 2018, the rate of change has dramatically slowed. The incidence rate has remained at around 57 up to recently. So you also know a few reasons that are behind this, but I wanted to give you the perspective of LLIN and explain that behind this stagnation, some of the reasons are unfortunately the quality and the efficacy of the LLINs. If LLINs account for 68% of the reduction of malaria cases, and problems are there with LLINs, with their quality, with their bioefficacy, there must be an impact on the progress against malaria. And when I say bioefficacy, I mean the ability of the mosquito net to kill and to reduce the density of mosquitoes in the area of deployment. Again, a short movie to tell you more about insecticide resistance, because this is what we are talking about here. Mosquitoes have become resistant to the pyrethroid class we are using to impregnate our mosquito net. And that is the whole issue. We find that the actual pyrethroids used will give us a very low mortality when they are exposed to the mosquitoes. We have some very alarming results where instead of getting the WHO standard of more than 80% mortality, we are getting 10% mortality. So for 100 mosquitoes that come into contact with the net, maybe only 10 or 17 or 20 or 30 mosquitoes will die. So I invite you to watch this short film telling us about the urgency of reacting to insecticide resistance. And of course, the community, the malaria community, has put very strong actions into place now and since the last few years. But the problem of insecticide resistance has been raised since 2008. This was also something we have worked a lot on. Let's have a look.
Resistance has been building and we are rapidly approaching the tipping point. The time to act is now. Malaria-transmitting mosquitoes have been held in check for the last 10 years, thanks to bed nets and homes both treated with insecticides. But there are signs that resistance to mosquitoes is growing sharply. The time to act is now. Across Africa, resistance is building to all insecticides. Most concerning is the resistance to pyrethroids, the only ones used in bed nets. Resistance like this is inevitable, and the evidence is building that we're rapidly approaching the tipping point. The time to act is now. A tipping point comes when mosquitoes, after many years of slowly building resistance, suddenly achieve much greater resistance very, very quickly. Nobody knows exactly when or how. It is the great challenge of evolution. We believe we are closing in on the tipping point today. The time to act is now. Despite the growing resistance, bed nets are still effective at preventing transmission. The physical barrier alone accounts for 44% of protection. But that's little cause for relief. We are in desperate need of new solutions. The time to act is now. IVCC is helping develop new public health insecticides as we speak. 3 new classes of insecticide will come to market within the next 6 to 8 years. With proper funding, we can speed up the development process and bring them along even sooner. The time to act is now. IVCC has been uniting funders, regulators, scientists, malaria control programs, and public health professionals. Working together can go a long way to diffuse the tipping point and defeat malaria once and for all. The time to act is now.
Yes, so you have heard it. Urgent action is needed to avoid control failure. And the hope for new classes of insecticide is expected in the next 8 to 10 years, hopefully sooner. But we need to do something now, and we already have solutions, and the normative environment has started to approve and recommend them. And that's when I can now introduce this new type of net that has been designed to counter the effect of insecticide resistance and to kill the mosquitoes. I'm talking about PBO LLINs. So before we look at their design, let's take a very quick look at the evolution and the speed of the evolution of pyritoid resistance in Africa. Let me take you to the next slide. And please, from 2000 up to today, look at the red dots. Those are confirmed resistance sites, and those are published peer-reviewed data. Yes, so you can see that this is all across, and this is where there was a possibility to test the resistance. Where there is no dot doesn't mean that there is no resistance. It means that there was no study made. So this is a map that is available online, by the way, for those who might be interested to look into their countries. This is a very user-friendly geospatial application. It's called IR Mapper. It's free, and it consolidates all the published data on insecticide resistance and on resistance mechanism. So you just Google irmapper.com, and you can look at the data that are available for your country, and it's very informative and showing you where do you have pockets of resistance. Unfortunately, as you can see on the map, resistance is really widespread now, but it's interesting to understand the various mechanisms that are at play there. So here on this infographic, I won't take you into all the details and the entomological aspect of resistance, but I think what is good to remember from, at least from this webinar, is that the purpose of life is to survive. Any living organism on Earth develop resistance and mutation to survive its environment and the harshness of the environment, including us humans. Imagine our great-great-great-great-grandparents. They would have not survived more than a few months in the cities we are living in. We ourselves have developed resistance to the pollution and to the harshness of our environment. So back to the mosquitoes, interesting to know that they have developed 4 resistance mechanisms to fight the attack of humans against them. So the first mechanism is called reduced penetration, is actually a physiological change on their cuticle. So the cuticle of the mosquito is the skin. And what the various generations of mosquitoes have done after being exposed to insecticide, the thickness of their skin has increased so that it can prevent or slow down the absorption or the penetration of the insecticides. Very clever little bugs. The second mechanisms that they are using is a behavioral one. The mosquitoes are just, decided that they better change their behavior and their ways and their places of biting. So they will bite earlier, before you enter the net, for example, or they would now blood feed on animals instead of only blood feeding on human. Those are the kind of mechanisms we are seeing. And you also have the target site resistance. So remember, I told you about insecticide producing a knockdown effect. So the mosquitoes have developed in their nervous system a form of resistance. They have changed the way the target site where actually the insecticide bind and give this toxic effect and give a knockdown to the mosquito. We can say, let's make it easier, they have changed the shape so that of this target site, so that when the molecule of insecticide comes into contact with this target site in the nervous system, it can't bind. It can't have an effect. It's like sliding off the target site. So again, a challenge of the evolution. And the last known mechanism is the metabolic resistance. So this is something that even us human, we are also doing a lot. We are producing enzymes to detoxify foreign materials that are entering our body, our system. So the mosquito is doing the same, and is producing a specific enzyme that actually block block and break down the insecticide before they can even have a toxic effect. So this is a short overview, and yes, of course, a bit simplified, but it actually works like this. So this is why today we end up with 3 types of mosquito nets. The standard monotreated net is the net that we are now saying it's not working anymore. And when we say it's not working, yes, of course, the physical barrier is still here, but it's not working as it should in terms of reducing the vector density, reducing the numbers of mosquitoes in your house, killing the mosquitoes, protecting those who are not yet under the net or those who are not sleeping under the net for various reasons. So the standard monotreated net is, as I said, made of 2 different materials, the polyester, the polyethylene, and then you incorporate the various insecticide, deltamethrin, permethrin, or alpha-permethrin. The PBO net, this is what is a topic of interest these days, because this is the only one now available on the market able to counter the effect of insecticide resistance. It actually kills 30% more mosquitoes, at least, and when it's a good one, than a standard net. So PBO means piperonyl butoxide. So it's a substance that is like a booster. It's called, in more proper word, a synergist. And the role of this booster is to block the detoxifying enzymes that the mosquito is producing. So it allows the insecticide to maintain its toxic action. And then we also these days talking about new generation net. They are still under pilots. They don't have yet data showing their increased efficacy. So they have started to be deployed in Africa under pilot studies. We have 2 main new generation. One is composed of alpha-permethrin and chlorphenapir. So chlorphenapir is actually acting on at a different level the raw production capacity of the mosquito. Let's say it acts like a larva seed. And then another net is a dual net, is alpha-permethrin and pyriproxyfen. So those nets are under study, and others are, of course, in the pipelines of manufacturers. This is how a PBO LLIN look like and how it's designed for increased efficacy. A bit looking just like a standard LLIN, but the decision of putting PBO on the roof because most, let's say all mosquitoes are always coming to the roof first, and then they go to the side. So the PBO is incorporated on the roof, and then the sides are made of polyesters. The sides are, because we know that they're the soft touch that the end users love. So knowing all this, now that you are all almost experts in LLINs, let me complete this session by a few words on quality. What makes the quality of an LLIN, and why quality is so crucial? We have seen it, the importance of killing mosquitoes, yes, reducing the density of victims. But I also want to tell you about the trust that people put into a mosquito net. We can't forget it. And I think if we have amongst our participants health workers and staff involved in behavior change communication campaigns, you all know how much effort and time it has taken to ensure that people understand and value the importance of sleeping under a mosquito net every night and all year long. The other thing is that when your mosquito net is not of a good quality, and you have, for example, an underdosed mosquito net, a net that has a very small amount of insecticide, each and every mosquito that will survive this net will hatch a more resistant generation. You actually expose the mosquito to a small dosage of insecticide, so the mosquito won't die. But not only it won't die, it will trigger what we call pressure on insecticide resistance. It will increase the capacity of the mosquito to hatch more and more resistant generation. So when the mosquitoes dance atop of the net and wait for us to get out to bite us, we not only give pressure to resistance, but we also erode the trust and the confidence we placed in the mosquito net. If you don't trust that your mosquito net is going to protect you and your family and the people around you, you tend to, increase the misuse of the mosquito net and use it for something else. I'm sure I'll get some questions about that. So here you have some few pictures of defect and quality problems on mosquito nets. And the most important one, because the one at the top, they are not good, yes, but they can be fixed. The one at the bottom, which has been seen with one manufacturer, is a non-conformity of the size. The mosquito net is too short. Look out, it's shrinking up at the bottom. So this makes it impossible to tuck it under your mattress. So let's have a look at the benchmarks for quality. LLIN is a public health tool and it is regulated, but we have 4 clusters of quality performance that we should, as a responsible manufacturer, always look at. And these clusters should also be looked at when you are the end user, when you are the country, when you are the program. Those are very important benchmarks that make the quality of the LLIN. So we have the first cluster is the chemical properties. We have talked about it already a little bit. The insecticide content, how much insecticide has been loaded into the net. We have to look at the wash resistance. We have seen it also. You now know everything about wash resistance. And we have to look at the insecticide regeneration. The bioefficacy properties, the ability to kill the mosquito, the capacity to deter the mosquito, they must be measured and they must be consistently verified. This is a capacity of the manufacturer, but it needs also to be a capacity in country. The physical properties of the net, another cluster, the weight of the net, the size, the mesh count, the bursting strength, of the netting, of the seam, the dimension stability when you wash. If you wash your net and your net shrink, that's not a good quality net. And finally, the workmanship, how nicely knitted the net is, the appearance, the dimensions, the defect, the stains, the double seams. This is also part of the quality of the net. So when we talk about quality, we talk about quality insurance and quality control. When do they happen? If an LLIN is a public health product that is controlled by WHO with regulations and standards, then we understand that it is WHO who stands as the normative environment for LLIN. So quality insurance happens at this level, at WHO level first. The WHO has a program that we call pre-qualification vector control. So in short, we call it WHO PQ. It used to be WPES. Most of you must know WPES. But since 2018, it's WHO PQ who is in charge of assessing the LLINs before they can access the market. They assess the LLINs, they assess the factory, and they have a whole set of benchmarks to do this assessment. Let me here take the opportunity to say that we are unfortunately in a very dangerous transition period, because when in late 2018, when WPES became PQ, what they did is they automatically convert all the mosquito nets that were approved under WPES into PQ. They took the same list and they just put it into PQ. And unfortunately, at that time, WPES was not able to assess the increased efficacy of the PBO net and the new generation net. So every net that was under PQ was assessed as a standard net, as a monotreated net, as a net with one insecticide. The capacity of WPES to assess the new generation was not yet that, sorry. And that's why PQ was also created to face this issue and to put in place new protocols, new standards, to also be able to assess new categories of LLIN. But unfortunately, in that time, as I'm talking now, some products that were under WPES had the name PBO, but they have never proven that they were PBO. They have never proven that they have an increased efficacy against resistant mosquitoes. So today we have a list, a PQ list of certain products that have not been yet verified. And of course, WHO is aware of that. And of course, WHO has put in place certain measures. They have asked the manufacturers to give all their data and to show that, yes, they are PBO, yes, they are new generation, yes, they are able to kill more, and they can verify the claim that they make, and they can deserve the name PBO, the name new generation. But as of now, they have not yet done it, and the deadline is sometime in September or January. So we are now in a time that we consider as a risky time, where some products have entered the category, have entered the PQ list without any data to verify their claim and to verify that they are actually, that they have an actual increased efficacy. So quality control and product conformity also happen at pre-shipment inspections. The donors and the countries, through their regulatory system, can also send agencies in charge of product conformity. You have SGS, Intersec also doing that. So they come and check that the product, before being shipped, before being loaded into the containers on their way to Africa, respect a certain level of quality. Another level of quality insurance and quality control must happen at the manufacturer level. The manufacturer must put in place very high standard, high quality control systems at the facility. And they should not do that once in a while. It should be an automated quality control system that is constantly verifying the quality control of the net. And the last quality insurance or quality control level that I want to share with you all is the one at country level. Not all the countries are doing it the same way. And that is why some scandals have happened in Africa. And that is why we have sometimes witnessed very substandard net deployed in Africa. Pre-shipment inspection of the net before being shipped are not enough. You need also to conduct post-shipment and post-deployment inspection, as we also do what we call post-market surveillance. We monitor our nets in the field after when they are open, after 6 months, after 12 months, after 2 years, after 3 years. We are constantly learning and trying to improve and making sure that we are held responsible for the very high quality of our nets. And every manufacturer has to do that if we want to have a fair, equitable market. So yes, the importance of quality control in countries, I'm talking to you, civil society mainly. Look at what happened. This is a small statement from Global Fund. Substandard and underdosed LLINs have made their way to Africa, and this is despite pre-shipment inspection. Meaning they went through the pre-shipment inspection. I'm sure you'll have many ideas of how it happened in India, and how those nets entered Africa. More than 60 million substandard nets have been deployed throughout Africa between 2016 and 2018. 60 million nets. So of course we know that this is not a mistake, because of course as a manufacturer you can make a mistake. You can have a quality issue and you can fix it. But 2 years of shipping under those nets towards Africa, this is not a mistake for me. And why I'm telling you that you have a very important role to play here, you and your researchers, and checking the quality of the net at your lab, checking if do they really have insecticide, are they really killing your mosquitoes at a WHO standard of at least 80% mortality. The nets who have entered Africa, there was a lot of many alarms were raised. And this is the example, a wonderful example of civil society, and a civil society organization in DRC called COSAP, who raised the alert and wrote directly to the Minister of Health. So this is here on the left, the letter that they wrote, and they copied all the partners. The letters went to the Minister of Health, and there was a very strong answer from the country. And this is what is also helping and encouraging the donors to look at the quality. As in Africa, we want to look at the quality. We are not just recipient, we are active members of a global fight against malaria. This is only when countries will make sure that they do post-distribution inspections once the nets have been distributed, in-country studies, when the active role of malaria partners and civil society will shine throughout many countries, because I know that the civil society and malaria partners are already very active in many countries, but not enough and not everywhere, that such scandals can stop. I've just told you about that, about certain mosquito net that have entered the category, the new PQ listing, because it was an automatic transition. This is now for you in country, when you hear about such a thing, to react and to say, okay, you are planning to deploy for us this brand and this brand, very good, but do we have data showing that this brand is actually has actually an increased efficacy? Because you as a country, you are paying a bit more money to get a new generation net or a PBO LLIN, but it needs to be proven that is a PBO LLIN. And today, only 2 PBO LLIN on the market have been verified by WHO. Their data has been proven and verified. Only 2 brands, and 5 are under the list. It won't last, but at least for this year, you need to be very careful. So here you go. Just remember again, a mosquito net is not just a very simple tool. It's a product that is here to protect and save lives, and it deserves to be produced under high quality standards. This is not a simple fishing net, and I know why I'm saying fishing net, and I'm sure you'll have questions about that. So we are now getting to the very end of this presentation. I hope you have learned a lot. I wanted to share with you a few tips on how to use and maintain your LLIN. So for the first utilization, when you remove the net from the bag, it's really good to hang it in the shade to air it out. And this is also to make sure that you have the right level of insecticide on at the surface of the net, because of course the net has been kept in a bag, in a very closed. It has traveled for long, and it's good to air it out. And you make sure that your net is not exposed to the sunlight, because the sunlight is actually affecting the insecticide. So this on your right is the kind of sign or the kind of symbol you can see on your mosquito net, showing that you need to air your net. This is the symbol here, for 24 hours before you hang it in the house, before you use it. So hanging your net, of course, better to do it with some help to make sure that you have hung it at the four corners. And to fold your net or to roll it up when you're not using it. This will help avoiding damages and tears. When you're using your net, you make sure that you tuck it under your mattress to block, of course, the mosquitoes from entering. This is the little sign that you can see here on some bags, mosquito net bags. You need, when you sleep under your net, you need to do that every night and all year long, and especially pregnant women and children. I repeat, every 2 minutes a child under 5 dies from malaria. Sleep under your net and make sure everyone in your household is sleeping under the net. Washing your net, I know some of us like washing the net and keeping it very white every week, but this is absolutely not recommended. You should only wash your net when it's dirty, and only with water and soap. No bleach, no detergent, no jig, just water and soap. Ideally 5 times per year. That's the sign you are seeing here, and you might see on your mosquito net bag this little symbol here showing you that it's good to monitor how many times you wash your net, because a net is built to last for 3 years of normal use or 20 washes. It was decided that it was 20 washes because 20 washes is like a benchmark, like the benchmark that is used to represent 3 years of use, of normal use in the field. Again, dry your net in the shade always, and it's better to do it on the grass, because when you hang it on the trees, you might tear it, you might get some holes. Make sure you always repair the holes that might appear on your net. As we are very proud, because we have a way of knitting the net that is preventing the holes from increasing in size. Some nets are like the skin tights of ladies or stockings of ladies. When there is a hole, the holes increase very fast and end up being like a big line. But whether it's a very good quality net or not, make sure you repair any hole or any tear that you can see on the net. Just use a needle and stitch your net. That is it. We are coming to the end, and I just wanted to share with you these beautiful pictures from Benin, and for you to hear that countries have been really, really innovative to redesign their distribution campaigns in compliance with this terrible COVID-19 measures that we can see throughout Africa. So yes, we know that transport and movement have been very much constrained. And all of you partners of Malaria, congratulations, and really, as a manufacturer, we are amazed by all the innovation that have come up to make sure that people could still receive their nets. And I think the number one innovation was to decide to perform a door-to-door distribution instead of a big gathering of people coming to take their nets. So congratulations, Africa. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Amy. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today. We really appreciate your time, and we appreciate the time that you actually took to come up with this presentation. Thank you very much. We had a lot of comments on the chat, so I will go to the questions and answers now. And I just want to mention to the audience that we are actually very thankful that Amy took the time to be with us today to talk about mosquito net, and I will invite any other expert who is with us to contact us at contact@impactsante.org. We're going to share our contact information. Please contact us if you will also like to spend your time to help to build capacity on civil society organization on mosquito net. If you have time, if you want to spend your time to do that, please email us as well so we can organize a session for you. So thank you very much, Amy. So there was a comment and question on the chat, Amy. I'll start by some of the last slides about airing out the mosquito net when we first bought them. So there was comment around, do all the nets have to be air out, or does it depend on some ingredients that the net have? And before you answer, I just want to say that our Ministry of Health in Cameroon, or at least in many countries, from what we know, the Ministry of Health always advise everyone to air their net, no matter what type or what brand or what ingredient you have. It's better to be safe that way, because we've seen some of the issues that some communities have when they do not air the net out, and usually the nets that are given through net campaigns, we don't really know which brand, so it's better to always air them out. But Amy, you can answer that. So I will take a series of questions, Amy, so if you want to note them, and then we'll give you the floor to answer them. So the first was about, does all the nets have to be aired out despite of what they are made of? The second question is, how many times of washing will it take before all the insecticides bound in the filament of the fiber get exhausted? And so I think the question means that when we wash the net, is there a number of times where you need to wash them, like up to how many times we need to wash them, so that we actually don't actually damage the insecticides? Is it up to 20 wash, or what's the number of times we need to wash them? And so there was also other questions around why is the LLINs manufacturers always talk about net to be effective, so up to 25 wash? Does this mean that the regeneration power has a lifespan? So it's the same question from Mr. Yamini. So hello, Mr. Yamini. Yes. So does it mean that the net have a lifespan if we can wash it up to 25 times? Other question from Isaac. How long does a net need to last? Like how long does a net last? Meaning, does it expire after 1 or 2 years? So once you have a net and you have opened it, what is the lifetime of the net? Is it 1 or 2 years? That's the question from Isaac. Another question from Eniaso is, what if the user of the net takes too long to wash the net? So for example, if you wash it during like 30 minutes or 1 hour, so what will be the effect on that on the net? Yes, so that was a question from Eniaso. And another question from Mr. Yamini is, so many countries would like to go with PBO net as a result of their certification of malaria intervention, but PBO seems to be costly than the basic standard LLIN. So is it not the time for net manufacturer to establish net production firm in Africa? I believe this will help reduce the cost of the net and minimize the lead time, and even create work for Africans who are the beneficiary of those nets. So Mr. Yamini has a question about, is it not the time for the net to be produced locally in Africa to reduce the cost? So then we have a question, Amy, please bear with us. We're very interesting. We have a lot of comments, a lot of questions. So thank you, Amy, for the content of your presentation. So another question from Kashosho. So I hope I'm saying it right. So Kashusho says, as LINs is a new project with high quality malaria prevention, taking into consideration that the most affected groups are from the rural and underserved communities. How does the Global Fund through CS4Me will facilitate accessibility of nets to poor, vulnerable, and underserved community? I think that's a question for us. So how do we facilitate access of those LLINs to poor and vulnerable communities? So that I will answer that, Amy, after you. Another question, Amy, is can local CSOs working in malaria be considered to support the net distribution and to make sure that underserved communities have access to it? So I will also answer that question. So which is the role of civil society in the distribution of mosquito net? For the over 50 million of poor quality nets already shipped in Africa, what are some of the common sites to identify them? That's the question from Richard. So Amy, yes, you can take the question and let me know if you need me to repeat some of them, but go ahead. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much for all these questions. So for the first question about airing your net, do we need to air all the nets? As long as the net is an insecticidal net, as long as it's a treated net, yes, you need to air it after removing it from the bag. This is because as it stayed in the bag, there is a high concentration at the surface of the net, a high concentration of insecticide, and it was only touched by the plastic of the bag. So it's good to just air it out for a day, no matter the brand. I hope I answer your question, because all the nets are treated with the same insecticide class, the Pyritoid. And if the Pyritoid are authorized by WHO because they are not toxic to human. Very small children can sleep under the net, newborn can sleep under the net, but touching the Pyritoid directly when it's highly concentrated can give certain people, is a very small number, but we can see it. I'm sure when we mention it, we can see it in the field. It can give like a small rash, or you can't, sometimes you can't even see, but you will itch your hands a little bit. This is the Pyritoid. You know, Pyritoid comes from a flower. It's the one put in the net is a synthetical insecticide, but it's actually imitating the nature, like everything actually. So it's a Pyrethrum flower. And even if you go and smell and touch that flower, you will also get a very slight reaction. So yes, please air your net for 24 hours before you hang them, especially when you hang them in a very small house. Not everyone is living in with a big room, and especially rural and certain urban settings. You only have a small, maybe 5 meters square or 10 meters square where you will hang your net. So it's good to air it out. That was for the first question. I hope I've answered correctly. Second question, how many times should we wash a net? So if you wash your net correctly with only soap and water and no detergent, the net, a quality net, is designed to retain its bioefficacy for 20 to 25 washes. Of course, maybe if you do it 30 times, the net will still have its bioefficacy. But you know, it's just like when you buy food, there is an expiry date, and if you eat, I don't know, a yogurt 1 day or 2 days after the expiry date, you might not be poisoned. You might not feel that the taste is changed, but it's like a deadline. From that time, the manufacturer cannot guarantee anymore that the net will be at the top of its performance. So why, there was also a question about why 20 or 25 wash. So the exact standard is 20 wash, not 25. 20 wash, it's a standard, is a laboratory standard that has been decided by the researchers at WHO. They estimate that 20 washes is correspond to 3 years of use in the field. This is actually a standard that is being challenged today, because even as we are monitoring our nets and as we are doing so many experiments in our laboratories, we can see that 20 washes does not always reflect 3 years of use in the field. So this is something that you might witness in the next years, a change of the standard. But for now, it's the standard as it is by WHO. You mentioned the regeneration wash power. So if you champion, like I was explaining during the presentation, if you manage your regeneration technology through the way you coat or you bind your insecticide into your fiber, you should get the effect of getting the net, the insecticide to migrate back to the surfaces of the net up to 20 or 25 washes. This is our guarantee as a manufacturer. You might be able to push more, but you should never find problems under 20 washes. And when you do, and certain brands have this problem, it means you are not championing your technology. And it means that you don't live up to your claim and to the quality standard that you have established. Next question, how long does it last? How long does a net last? Well, I could ask you, how long can your car last? It will depend how you drive it and how you treat it and how you maintain it. But we design our net to last 3 years, and we have just completed some studies with WHO, and we are very happy to see that our PBO LLIN actually lasts for 3 years, and the retention of PBO in our nets is still acceptable and still good after 3 years. The very first mosquito net claimed to last for 5 years, but it was because back in the day they used to assess this in the lab and not in the real field conditions. We very well know now that only the very good quality LLIN can last for 3 years, and the studies are actually showing that we should increase the rate of mass distribution campaign, because the way people use the net, the conditions and the environment where the net are deployed are showing that a net actually lasts more 2 years than 3 years, whether it's too torn or it's discarded or it's lost or given. But a net, unfortunately, the reality is that a net can last 2 years, mainly last 2 years. But if you use it very well, the top condition, you can keep it for 3 years. Another question was about the washing time. I'm sure you're talking about soaking your net. I think that's what you mean. How long do you need to wash your net? If you are lucky enough to have a washing machine, put your net on a quick wash, quick 15 or quick 30, it's enough. Avoid soaking the net the whole night. But if you only do that with water and soap, the net should be okay. But best is to just wash, scrub, and put in the shade to dry. Don't put it in the sun. I'm also seeing a question in the comment here about, can I put it in the sun to dry? Not at all. The ultraviolet rays of the sun tend to destroy the molecules of the insecticide. And that's why we always say, please put it in the shade. It will damage, it will alter the stability of the insecticide. The last question was about is the time to manufacture in Africa is now? This is a question that is of a lot of interest for me personally. Let me start by telling you that Africa has started the manufacturing of nets. Some nets are being manufactured in Tanzania, in Rwanda, and a little bit in Nigeria. But those facilities are actually cut and sew. So the raw materials already impregnated are coming from abroad, from India, from China, from these kind of places, and they only arrive in Africa to be cut and assembled. So we don't have yet a facility that is able to do it all, to have all the capacities to do everything. Why is that? It's not like Africa cannot do it. But for now, we have two main issues. And I'm actually very pro Made in Africa. I think it's a great thing to do that. Yes, it will shorten the time of delivery. But unfortunately, the problem we have in Africa, the transport within Africa is extremely expensive. To ship a net from Kenya to Central Africa, let's say, is more expensive than shipping it directly from China or from India to that country. So intra-Africa transport is extremely expensive. Then people are also talking about the cost of work, that the human resources are more expensive in Africa than in Asia or China. There is a bit of truth, and I think there is also that is not also completely true. And I think we can reach a level of expertise, of training, also in Africa with the technicities that are necessary to make a net. We ourselves at Insecticide are trying to also do that and have and promote this Made in Africa. This is a work in progress, and I hope I'll be able to share with you very soon what we are going to do. What else? And then the following questions, I think, were for Olivia in terms of local CSO, supporting distribution, and how to increase the access to the poor and remote communities in Africa. I think there's a lot of emphasis this year in the Global Fund new application about this. So I'll give the floor to Olivia on that. Just the last one, I'm seeing John saying that not all mosquitoes go to the roof of the net first. Not all, but more than 90%. And why I wanted to answer that question, there is two ways of thinking at the design of a mosquito net. One way is to focus on the mosquito, on what you're trying to kill. And another way is to focus on the people who are going to use the net. And I think this is a compromise that we have made when we decided that the roof should be holding the PBO together with the insecticide, because PBO cannot be stabilized and impregnated in polyester. And we know that end users really cherish the soft polyester net. They like that soft one more than the harsh one. The harsh one ends up, the polyethylene, the harsh material, ends up being misused terribly. And when I say misused terribly, I'm talking about fishing nets. And when you use polyethylene net to fish, you're actually destroying the whole ecosystem of the river or the lake where you are dipping your net, because the pyritoid, there's microorganisms that are very sensitive in the water, that are very sensitive to pyritoid. So you should never wash your net in the river, and you should never use your net to fish. So polyester net are soft, and they are not used to fish because it's not a good fishing net. So when you choose to have the roof made of polyester, of polyethylene, so that it can contain the roof, the PBO, I think you are user-centered in your design, and that's very important. I'm done. Olivia, please.
Thank you so much, Amy. The presentation is actually very interesting. We are way over time, but we keep receiving a lot of comments and questions. So before I just read maybe the two last questions, Amy, I'll just respond to our colleague who asked the question about CS for me and Global Fund. Yes, I think the role of civil society is not CS for me per se, but it's all of us. It's all the organizations who are working in the fight against malaria Africa. Our role is to make sure that the most affected and underserved community have access to quality net, not just net, but really quality net, and also use them correctly. So this is our role. So we need to actually have conversations among ourselves. Maybe we will have separate webinar just among ourselves to actually strategize on how we make sure we play that role effectively. And like you mentioned, one of the way of us playing that role effectively is to make sure we are very engaged in the development of the malaria programs, malaria strategy, malaria concept note of the Global Fund, that we actually also we can actually also increase domestic advocacy to ask our own government, our own leaders to start investing in mosquito net. And somebody also made the comment about producing net locally. So we need to advocate to our own leaders, to the African unions, to the CDC Africa, to all of our leaders, to make sure that they can invest in research, in net production, to make sure that our community have access to tools that can prevent malaria. And yes, so we have a lot of advocacy to do, and we should also make sure that we are very involved in community monitoring activities and programs to make sure that we can actually raise our voices if we see communities that do not have access to those nets, and there are so many. So we need to, I mean, this is an internal discussion we need to have among civil society. So we will probably schedule that discussion so we can strategize about how to actually make sure that we play our role, because we also need to be accountable. So this presentation was just an introduction to mosquito nets, just for all of us to know what is out there, what type of nets are out there, what are PBOs. I know we hear about PBOs and new generation in the new Global Fund concept note, but we don't really know what we didn't really know what those were. So the presentation was just an introduction to those, to what is happening in the world of mosquito net. But we need to do more advocacy. We need to advocate for even better net, for newer generation of net, for our government and other government to invest greatly in producing better tools, and also making sure that we can have local production. But at the same time, we have a lot of nets that are working, because don't forget, for now, mosquito nets are the most effective, cost-effective way to prevent malaria. Right now, it's the most cost-effective way. So it lasts for 3 years and is highly effective in malaria prevention. So we need to make sure that the nets that we have currently are used correctly. So we didn't really talk about the usage of nets in this presentation, but we know in our community sometimes people use the net wrongly for the wrong reason, to fish or to do other things. So we need to educate our community, and we need to make sure that our communities are really empowered and can use the net effectively. So this is also what a huge area where we need to work on. So I think Amy has started to answer to some of the questions that are online. There was a question in French about, it says in some community that some nets can be regenerated if they are actually soaked into some herbs that we call neem. So Amy rightly answered to that by saying it's wrong. So there are a lot of misconceptions around net in our community that we need to address. And so we need to make sure that we give people the right information. And right now, nets are the most effective way, and we need to use them correctly. And also, we need to do our own research to find out what are quality nets, and make sure that our community only gets the best, because that's what they deserve. And so we're counting on all of you who are with us today to take this information and to actually help also to raise, if you have any issue that you would like to raise. If you need another webinar with other partners, maybe from WHO, or maybe from our own African research centers, or from our own National Malaria Control Programs, please send us messages and let us know which webinar you would like us to organize on which topic, so that we make sure we continue to have those information. So we're going to end our webinar, and I just want to reassure everybody that the presentation will be available on our website as we usually do. You're going to receive a link to the presentation, but you will check the impactsante.org, the website. Yes, so you will check the website, and the presentation will be there next week. You have the website there, impactsante.org. You have the presentation. We also have a YouTube channel. You have the audio there, and you also see all our previous webinar and our previous presentation. So thank you so much. Thank you, Amy, first of all, for your time. You took the time to present, and you took the time to actually stay with us even really over time. And we are still getting a lot of questions and comments, but we're going to end now. And we thank you very much. And we thank also the private sector. This is a private civil society and private sector collaboration. So we hope that we will have more of this opportunity to collaborate with the private sector, to learn from each other, and also to see how to work together hands, because the fight against malaria, we need the partnership of everybody, civil society, private sector, government. So we need everybody to be involved. So we thank you for your time, and we hope that this is just the beginning of many, many, many other sessions that we're going to have with you, Amy, on some of these topics. And thank you to everyone who sent questions and comments. And we will see you in our next webinar that we will plan later on. But thank you so much, everybody. And thank you, Amy.
Thank you very much, Olivia. Thank you all. Thank you for your questions. If you have a way for me to save those questions, I'll be happy to answer them even via email or directly to you, Olivia, and you can pass them over, no problem. I'll be also happy to collaborate again, and really thank you so much for the interest and organizing this event.
Great, thank you, Amy. And we have a lot of comments in the chat about great presentation. Everyone wants your presentation.
Nice.
So don't worry, you have the presentation on the website next week with the video and audio as well. So receive also the the warm thanks of many organizations who joined us from many, many countries. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day, and be safe, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and don't hesitate to reach out again. We are here. That's our passion. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.